Welcome, traveler. You've arrived at Snooze Scholar, a place where thought moves slowly, softly, and where ancient ideas are allowed to breathe. Tonight, we drift back. Not to a battlefield, not to a throne room, but to a quiet corner of the mind. This is not the story of a war or a scandal or a grand invention. This is the story of how to remain calm in a world that rarely is. Long before mindfulness apps, before self-help shelves, before therapists and podcasts and mantras written in calligraphy, there were the Stoics, men with dusty cloaks, ink-stained fingers, and eyes that had seen too much chaos, too much ambition, too much loss. They lived in Rome and Athens, but also in exile, in silence, in suffering. They lived among emperors and slaves, soldiers and scholars, and they all asked the same quiet question. How do I live well when I cannot control the world? Not by shouting, not by forcing, but by surrendering. Not to weakness, but to wisdom. They believed that peace is not found in riches or fame or the perfect outcome. They believed peace comes from aligning yourself with the way things are. They were not cold, not emotionless. That's a myth. They felt fear, they mourned, they failed, but they practiced every day the art of being still in the middle of storms. They sat with discomfort. They chose reason over panic. They whispered to themselves. In letters, in journals, in the deepest parts of their thoughts. You cannot control what happens. You can only control how you respond. Tonight, we walk slowly through their world. We won't memorize doctrines. We won't debate or critique. We will listen. We will let the dust of their words settle into us. Because beneath all the ancient marble and Latin phrases, there is something very human and very kind. A philosophy not for kings or geniuses, but for anyone who has ever felt overwhelmed, disappointed, restless. Anyone who has ever laid awake, wishing things were different. The Stoics didn't teach us how to change the world. They taught us how to change the way we carry it. So settle in. Let your body soften. Let your breath move like slow wind over calm water. And follow me now. Into the minds of those who learned not how to conquer life, but how to coexist with it. Long before the term mental health existed. Before burnout had a name, before mindfulness was something people could download. There were people living in the eye of a storm. The world was ancient Rome, grand, expansive, beautiful, and terrifying. Its roads stretched across continents. Its laws echoed through temples, forums, and battlefields. Its statues loomed over marketplaces and cities of stone. But beneath the grandeur, beneath the weight of marble and empire, life was fragile. You could be born a senator's son and still be ruined by politics. You could serve in war and come home with nothing. Plagues swept through cities. Fires consumed entire neighborhoods. One bad harvest could undo 100 days of good luck. Power changed hands like dice tossed across a marble floor. Emperors rose in glory and fell in poison and whispers. Philosophy was not an indulgence. It was a survival tool. It wasn't written to pass exams. It was written to endure pain, to make sense of exile and injustice and heartbreak. It was whispered in cold prison cells, scribbled on wax tablets, and spoken quietly on long walks through crumbling gardens. This is the world Stoicism was born into, not a world of serenity, but of noise, pressure, uncertainty. And amidst that noise, a group of thinkers began to write, to teach, to live, as if the real fortress wasn't made of stone, but of inner peace. They asked, what if nothing outside of you can truly harm you? What if your response is the only thing that matters? What if happiness isn't pleasure or power, but something simpler, something quieter, something like alignment, to live in harmony with nature, not trees and rivers, though those matter, but the nature of life itself, its cycles, its loss, its unpredictability, its flow. They believed the key to peace was not to force the river to change course, but to learn how to float with it, to accept what is beyond you, to take responsibility for what is within you, to love not the version of life you imagined, but the one you are in right now. This was Stoicism's gift, a calm voice in the middle of panic, a candle in a storm, a philosophy not to escape life, but to enter it more fully. And it all began with 4 simple virtues. There's a misunderstanding that follows the word Stoic, that it means cold, emotionless, unmoved. But that's not what Stoicism is. Not really. Stoicism is not about becoming a statue. It's about becoming a mountain, rooted, steady, while the weather of life changes all around you. At its core, Stoicism is a philosophy of inner alignment. It's a practice, not just an idea, a way of moving through the world without being carried away by it. The Stoics believed that the world outside of you, what people say, what happens, what is taken or given, is not up to you, but your mind, your judgments, your reactions, your choices, those are yours. And in that space, between stimulus and response, is where freedom lives. Stoicism is built on a very simple observation. Life is unpredictable. People will disappoint you. Fortune will come and go. The rain will fall when you hoped for sun. The sun will shine on days you'd rather hide. So the question becomes, how will you respond? Will you fight everything you cannot control? Or will you learn to let go of what isn't yours and tend gently to what is? The Stoics taught that we cannot change the course of the wind, but we can adjust our sails. And they believed that virtue, not pleasure, not reputation, not even success, was the only true good, that living with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control was not only the path to peace, but the purpose of life itself. They didn't say, "Don't feel." They said, "Don't be ruled by what you feel." They didn't say, "Don't care." They said, "Care deeply, but wisely." They didn't say, "Avoid hardship." They said, "Let hardship refine you." To be stoic was to be alive, not in denial, but in acceptance, not in resistance to reality, but in harmony with it, to look at life, not as something owed to you, but as something you participate in, something you shape, not through force, but through your character. And in a world filled with distractions, comparisons, and constant movement, Stoicism offers something rare, a reason to pause, to breathe, to ask, what is truly in my control? And then to give your full attention to only that. If Stoicism had a heart, it would beat with 4 slow pulses. These are not rules, not commandments, not demands etched in stone. They are virtues, gentle anchors for the soul, ancient, steady, and alive even now. Together, they form the compass of a Stoic life. And tonight, we walk beside each one, softly, patiently, like candles guiding us through fog. The first virtue is wisdom, but not just cleverness or intellect. To the Stoics, wisdom meant knowing what truly matters. It meant understanding the difference between what you can control and what you cannot. It meant asking not, "Is this easy? But is this right?" Wisdom is slow. It listens more than it speaks. It asks questions even when others want answers. And it knows, always, that it knows very little. The second virtue is courage, not just in battle, but in daily life. The courage to be honest. The courage to hold your ground when things get uncomfortable. The courage to remain kind in the face of cruelty and calm in the face of chaos. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the quiet decision to move forward, even when fear is sitting right beside you. For the Stoics, courage meant choosing virtue over convenience. The third virtue is justice, not as punishment, but as fairness, as balance. To the Stoics, justice meant doing right by others, treating people with dignity, not because they deserve it, but because you are just. It meant remembering that we are all part of one shared human family, and that the well-being of the world is bound to your actions, no matter how small. Justice begins not in law, but in intention, in how you speak, in how you serve, in how you choose to live among others. And finally, temperance, the most quiet of the virtues, the art of restraint, of balance, of knowing when to stop. Temperance is the choice to say, "This is enough." In a world of hunger and haste, temperance is stillness. It's savoring instead of consuming. Patience instead of impulse. Simplicity over excess. It doesn't deny pleasure, it refines it. Together, these four form the shape of a life well lived. Not loud, not perfect, but principled. They don't guarantee success. They don't shield you from pain, but they give you something far more valuable, a way to move through the world without losing yourself. To be a Stoic is not to be unmoved. It is to choose what moves you and to live gently in alignment with that choice. Life is full of interruptions. A door slams unexpectedly. A loved one forgets to call. Rain falls on a day meant for sunshine. The food is cold. A stranger cuts in line. The plan changes. The letter never arrives. These moments, small or large, come without warning. They don't ask for permission. They simply happen, and we react. We tense. We judge. We resist. But the Stoics saw things differently. They believed that events are neutral, that things happen in the world, but they do not on their own carry meaning. They simply are. It's the mind that interprets, that adds color, that names something as good or bad, success or failure, insult or compliment. And therefore, the Stoics taught, the key to peace is not to change the world, but to change how we see it. Epictetus, once enslaved, later a great teacher, put it simply, men are disturbed not by things, but by the view they take of them. Let that settle in. It's not the traffic that makes you angry. It's the story in your head. This shouldn't be happening. I'm going to be late. This is unfair. It's not the rude comment that causes pain. It's the thought, they disrespected me. I need to prove something. I am less because of this. It's not failure that hurts the most. It's the voice that says, this means I am not enough. But what if we could pause? What if we could put space between the event and the reaction? The Stoics believed that space is everything. In that pause, we can choose how to see, how to respond, how to frame what just happened. They called this the discipline of perception. It was a practice dash, one that turned the mind into a kind of inner fortress. Not a cold stone wall, but a place of deep steadiness. Imagine standing beside a river. The current is strong. Twigs, leaves, broken branches, all carried swiftly past you. You don't chase them. You don't dive in after each one. You observe. That's the mind of a Stoic. Letting thoughts and feelings pass. Observed, but not obeyed. If someone insults you, pause. Is it truly about you? Or are they speaking from their own wound? If you fail at something, pause. Is this the end of the story? Or simply a chapter, a lesson, a redirection? To the Stoics, this wasn't just mental trickery. It was a return to truth. because most of what we suffer is not what happened, but how we framed it in our minds. And perception isn't pretending everything is fine. It's asking, what else could this mean? Can I see this as part of my training? Is there something useful, something noble in how I respond? Even pain, they believed,
can be a teacher.
can be a teacher. Even loss can reveal what we truly value. Even death can remind us how precious each breath is. And so they trained their minds not to avoid pain, but to meet it with understanding, to accept what comes, to interpret with gentleness, to remember that the lens you choose is more powerful than the thing you're looking at. Because as Marcus Aurelius, emperor and Stoic, once wrote, if you are troubled by something outside yourself, it is not the thing itself that troubles you, but your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. You are not the storm. You are the sky it moves through. You are not what happens to you. You are what you do with it. And so the practice begins with a pause, a breath, a question. What else could this be? And just like that, a bit of peace returns, not because the world changed, but because you did. He could have had anything: gold, wine, silk, servants to speak for him, sculptors to immortalize him, generals to fight his wars. He had the title most men could only dream of: Emperor of Rome. His name was Marcus Aurelius. And yet, he didn't see himself as grand. He saw himself as a man, flawed, fleeting, human. Each night, as the empire slept, he picked up a small pen and began to write. Not orders, not speeches, but quiet thoughts. To himself, a private journal never meant for the world. We know it today as the Meditations. But to Marcus, it was simply a mirror, a place to examine the soul when power threatened to distract it. He was not born to be emperor, but when fate called, he answered. He led armies, he faced plague, he suffered betrayal, grief, exhaustion, and through it all, he returned to philosophy, not to decorate his rule, but to survive it. Imagine him, alone in a tent after a long campaign, rain falling on canvas, the scent of wet leather and cold ash. By candlelight, he writes, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He is not preaching. He is reminding himself. He is trying, like all of us, to stay calm in the middle of uncertainty. He writes about anger, how to observe it, then let it go. He writes about death, not to fear it, but to use it as a compass for what matters now. He writes about fame, how hollow it is, how quickly names are forgotten, even those once etched in marble. He writes to be present, to live not in the glow of future victories or past mistakes, but in the simple truth of this moment. Even as emperor, Marcus believed he owned nothing, not the empire, not his reputation, not even his body. He believed the only thing he truly possessed was his mind, and so he cultivated it, quietly, faithfully. He did not wear Stoicism as armor to avoid feeling. He used it to stay grounded, to love wisely, to mourn fully, to lead justly. And though he could have commanded armies with a glance, he instead wrestled with his own emotions. Like a man taming wild horses in a private field. He once wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." Not the words of a conqueror, the words of a man, trying to remember what matters. Today, Marcus Aurelius is remembered not just as a ruler, but as a philosopher, not because he claimed to be wise, but because he knew how often he forgot. And in those forgotten moments, he paused, he reflected, he wrote, not for applause, not for history, but for clarity, so that in a world of empire and ego, he could remain simply himself. He was born into bondage, not metaphorically, literally. Epictetus, whose name means acquired, was born a slave in the Roman Empire. He had no last name, no land, no choice. His body belonged to another man. His future was not his own. And yet, out of that silence, out of that obscurity, came one of the clearest, calmest voices in the history of philosophy. A man with nothing, who taught the world what it means to be free. We don't know much about his early life, only that he was enslaved in Rome. His master, ironically, was a man close to the emperor, a powerful administrator, rich in everything but restraint. One story says Epictetus suffered an injury, perhaps even a broken leg, at the hands of this master. But what matters most is how he responded. He didn't curse the man. He didn't fall into despair. He simply observed the pain and accepted the moment, because he understood something deeper, that while someone could imprison his body, his mind was still his own. Eventually, Epictetus was freed, not in glory, not in riches, but with enough breath and time to teach. And what he taught was this: that freedom is not the absence of chains, it's the mastery of your inner world. He taught that no one can make you angry, unless you let them, that no insult can harm you, unless you agree with it, that the only true good is virtue, and the only true evil is giving up control over your own character. Epictetus didn't write his thoughts down himself, but his student, Arrian, did, compiling lectures and sayings into quiet, powerful works. In those pages, we hear a voice that is both humble and unshakable, a man who reminds us over and over again, we suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgments about them. He speaks not with bitterness, but with astonishing clarity. He encourages detachment, not from love or life, but from illusions. He asks us to remember, we don't control our bodies. We don't control our reputations. We don't control what others do, think, or say, but we do control our effort, our choices, our thoughts, and in that small space is all the power we'll ever need. Epictetus never ruled a nation. He never owned a palace. He never wore the laurels of conquest. But emperors read his words, generals quoted him, modern leaders still turn to him when the weight of the world feels too heavy. He once said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." And with that thought, a man born a slave taught the world how to be sovereign. Epictetus was the outsider, and Marcus Aurelius the reluctant emperor. Then Seneca was something else entirely. He was the Stoic in the middle of it all. Wealth, politics, power, danger. Born in Cordoba, Spain, and raised in Rome, Seneca lived not in exile, though he knew it well, but in the eye of the empire. He advised emperors, debated with senators, and navigated the cutthroat intrigues of imperial Rome. But in the still moments between meetings, he wrote, not grand treatises, not heavy philosophy books, but letters, soft, personal, reflective letters. Letters about how to live, how to let go, how to be at peace in a world that never stops asking for more. Seneca's life was one of tension. He preached simplicity, but lived surrounded by luxury. He called for calm, but served a young emperor, Nero, whose name would become a symbol of madness. Seneca did not pretend to be perfect. He was not blind to his contradictions. He acknowledged them, often painfully. But still, he wrote. And in his writing, we find someone deeply human. Not a preacher from a mountain, but a voice across the table asking, are you spending your time wisely? Are you mastering your desires, or are they mastering you? His letters are filled with gentle urgency. He speaks about time, how short it is, how easily we give it away. He writes, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. He reminds us to be present, to reflect daily, to imagine that each evening might be our last, not morbidly, but gratefully. Seneca taught that death should not frighten us, but inspire us to live well. He believed that wisdom wasn't found in escaping the world, but in walking through it with integrity. To be surrounded by noise and still hear your own thoughts, to be surrounded by greed and still practice restraint, to have everything and still know what really matters. Seneca eventually fell from favor, accused of conspiracy, ordered to die by his former student, Nero. And so, as calmly as he had lived, he prepared his own death. With dignity, with composure, with the very principles he had spent a lifetime writing about. Even in those final moments, he remained a Stoic, a man who knew that philosophy was not a decoration, but a way of being. His letters, still read, still quoted, still underlined today, remind us that wisdom doesn't come from seclusion, but from practice, from asking hard questions, from making small adjustments, from choosing again and again to live deliberately. Seneca reminds us that you don't need a quiet world to find peace. You just need to carry it with you. The Stoics did not turn away from the truth. They walked straight into it, not with fear, but with open eyes. They did not deny suffering. They did not hide from loss. They did not pretend that life was anything but fleeting. Instead, they learned how to make peace with it, and even, eventually, to love it. Two phrases guided them through this quiet courage: Memento Mori, Amor Fati. Memento Mori, remember you must die. At first it sounds grim, a reminder of death, something many people avoid or soften or dress in euphemism. But to the Stoics, Memento Mori was not a threat. It was a gift, a gentle tapping on the shoulder saying, remember, this doesn't last forever, so live while you can. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." Epictetus said, "Keep death and exile before your eyes every day, and you'll never have a base thought. Not because death is dark, but because it makes life brighter. To remember that time is limited, is to treat each moment as rare, each sunrise as temporary, each word, each touch, each act of kindness, as something that will never happen again." In quite the same way, Memento Mori is not meant to haunt you. It's meant to awaken you, to hold a friend's hand more gently, to forgive faster, to speak more truth, to waste less time scrolling, complaining, postponing. It's not about fearing death. It's about loving life more, because you know it won't wait. Amor Fati, love of one's fate. If Memento Mori is about acceptance of death, then Amor Fati is about embracing life as it is, not as we imagined it, not as we hoped it would be, but as it is, right now. The phrase means, love your fate. Not just tolerate it, not just endure it. Love it. Even the parts that feel unfair, even the pain, even the delays, the detours, the things you never asked for. To the Stoics, Amor Fati wasn't passive surrender. It was active cooperation with the rhythm of the universe. It was learning to say, this too is part of my path. This is not a mistake. This moment, even this one, is worthy of my attention, my presence, and my care. Because when you resist what is, you suffer twice. But when you embrace it, even imperfectly, You begin to find meaning in places you never thought to look. You begin to see that the rain, the lost job, the heartbreak, the missed train might carry something hidden, a lesson, a redirection, a chance to grow, to soften, to start again. Memento Mori, Amor, Fati. Two ancient phrases still alive in quiet corners of modern thought. They do not ask you to be fearless. They ask you to be present, to treat life as the precious, messy, mysterious thing that it is, and to walk forward, not with control, but with deep, humble trust. You do not have forever, but you do have now. And that is more than enough. But in some ways, it might be even louder. We wake to alarms, scroll through headlines, compare, react, respond, likes, pings, deadlines, delays. We carry the weight of opinions, the pressure of performance, the silent ache of always feeling behind. And still, the Stoics speak, not through proclamations, but through presence. Their voices, soft and enduring, remind us that even in a busy modern life, there is another way to be. You don't need to wear a toga, or quote Latin, or give up your phone and live in a cave. You just need to pause, to breathe, to remember what's yours and what isn't. You don't control traffic, but you control whether it ruins your day. You don't control other people, but you control how much space they rent in your head. You don't control the past, but you control the story you tell yourself about it. And in every moment, you can return to that simple Stoic principle. Focus only on what you can control. That is enough. Maybe it starts with one breath, one response you don't give, one moment where you say, "This isn't worth my peace." Maybe it's writing in a notebook at night, the way Marcus Aurelius did. Not for anyone else, but to untangle your own thoughts. Maybe it's choosing silence instead of arguing, stillness instead of scrolling, kindness instead of competition. That is Stoicism today. Not as a trend, but as a practice, a quiet rebellion against the chaos. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to get it right every day. Even Marcus forgot his own teachings. Even Seneca struggled with wealth and simplicity. Even Epictetus likely had days where the past felt heavy. But they kept showing up, kept reflecting, kept practicing. And so can you, because Stoicism isn't about being perfect. It's about being present, about standing tall in the wind, softening when needed, and living with the kind of calm that no storm can take away. So tonight, as the noise fades, as the lights dim, as the world quiets outside your window, let it go. What you didn't finish, what someone said, what you can't fix right now. You are not here to win the day. You are here to live it, to practice your peace, to tend to your mind, to remember what's yours, and to carry gently the wisdom of those who came before you. like a candle in the dark.